Right, let's just, before we go through sort of the sequence of events of the day, let's just talk about Justin Welby's statement, which he published on social media at lunchtime. I'm sure he sent it to you too. Just what do you make of what he had to say? And it's always interesting to see the reasons people give for what they're actually resigning over.
Actually, what I was struck by was that it was very focused on the survivors of abuse, which is what a lot of people have said Justin Welby has not been enough over the last 12 years, and that a lot of the actions of the church have not been focused on survivors. You know, he's going now. I suppose he could have put anything. This is really focused on that. It's really focused on his conscience at the report that dropped a few days ago. But it said the Macon review, which was the review that dropped on Thursday, which focused on the church's handling and his handling of the case of the most prolific abuser associated with the Church of England, John Smythe, who abused more than 120 boys. So it said the Macon reviews exposed the long-maintained conspiracy of silence about the heinous abuses of John Smythe. When I was informed in 2013 and told that police had been notified, I believed wrongly that an appropriate resolution would follow. It's very clear that I must take personal and institutional responsibility for the long and re-traumatizing period since 2013. As I step down, I do so in sorrow with all victims and survivors of abuse. I believe that stepping aside is in the best interests of the Church of England, which I dearly love and which I've been honoured to serve.
The two bits that jumped out at me, other than that, were he said that for nearly 12 years, I have, quote, struggled to introduce improvements in just how the Church of England looks after people who are involved in the church, which seemed to me like quite a swipe at his colleagues and the institution. He's obviously been trying to push for changes that he hasn't been able to get. Now, some people might say, oh, he might say that, wouldn't he, after he's been he's had to resign over these sorts of failings, but it does suggest that he's maybe quite angry with just the institution itself.
It's a really cumbersome sort of machine, and it takes a long time to introduce change. The systems that have been introduced don't work. I mean, we've seen cases fall through the cracks. I mean, we're not talking about historic cases. We're talking about active cases, things that have gone wrong in recent years. And we keep hearing they're trying to do this or they're trying to push that forward, and it doesn't happen. Things take so long to happen. There have been so many inquiries, so many reviews, so many reports, and you speak to people who've authored those reports years later and they say, you know what, none of the recommendations have been introduced. So yes, he talks as if, and look, there have been changes. There are many more people who work in a safeguarding capacity across the Church of England now than they did when he took over nearly 12 years ago. Certainly it's talked about much more. Certainly the survivor experience, I suppose, and how they need to be looked after is talked about more. Survivors don't feel that things are done well. Survivor groups were among the most vocal. And not just survivors of John Smythe's abuse. Other survivors were saying he needs to step down because he's not got it right.
The other thing that jumped about that statement is the first sentence where it says, having sought the gracious permission of His Majesty the King, I've decided to resign. And it's just a reminder of how central the role of the church is actually in our setup as a state.
Yeah, I mean, so the King is the Supreme Governor of the Church of England. And, you know, the Church of England is the established church. It's got a privileged position in the kind of constitutional life of this country. 26 bishops and archbishops automatically sit in the House of Lords, for example. They were debating things in the House of Lords yesterday. So they do have a very important role in this country, but you have to remember he's also heading an Anglican communion of about 85 million people around the world. So the man is stepping down that has basically held things together in an institution that, let me tell you, can be pretty polarized over lots of issues. You know, some people have been critical of Justin Welby in the fact that he has not taken a firm stand on this or that, on whether same-sex union, there should be blessings for same-sex unions and so on. And I've had discussions with him where we've gone round the houses on this issue, and he has said, you know what, my role is not to call it, is not to say this is right or this is wrong, it's to hold things together. And more than any other denomination and any other faith that I know, it is a really broad church, the Church of England. And when you look at the Anglican Communion across very different cultures, it's even more diverse. And to try and hold that all together is a difficult job. And he's done that relatively well in the face of a lot of polarization. And so there are concerns about what happens now, what direction the church goes in, and whether whoever comes next can hold it together.
And in terms of the timeline of what happened, we last spoke at about 6:30 on Monday evening, and you'd interviewed the Bishop of Newcastle, and she had come out publicly to say that Justin Welby should stand aside. What happened after that? Was there kind of growing pressure on him overnight and into this morning?
Good question. I mean,
I suppose it's hard to know. A lot of this would have been closed doors, maybe.
No, the question is, the question was yesterday as to whether that first bishop putting her head above the parapet was going to lead to others doing the same. It didn't. Others didn't come out publicly and say, yes, I agree, he should step down. But a petition that was started by some members of the General Synod had garnered around 10,000 signatories overnight, a lot of clergy, serving clergy, but a lot of lay people as well. So from publicly, that's where a lot of the pressure was coming. Certainly victims groups, survivor groups were continuing to call for him to step down because of the integrity of him personally, but also the integrity of the institution. And actually it didn't feel like there was a great deal of movement. And then suddenly we started to hear that perhaps something was going to happen, but it actually happened very suddenly. I
remember last night we were saying that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, when he was on his plane to the climate change summit in Azerbaijan, he'd been asked about this and he said it was a matter for the church. But then when he was asked about it on Tuesday on camera and we could actually hear him, he went much further. And I think that will have definitely added to the pressure. So let's have a listen to what the Prime Minister said to journalists in Baku.
What I know of the allegations, they're clearly horrific in relation to this particular case. Both in their scale and their content. And my thoughts, as they are with all of these issues, are with the victims here who have obviously been failed very, very badly. I'm not, it's a matter in the end for the church, but I'm not going to shy away from the fact that saying these are horrific allegations and that my thoughts are with the victims in relation to it. I think that's very important.
Yes, so he was strong in terms of saying that the victims, the survivors, had been failed by the institution. They certainly had been over decades, actually. He wouldn't be drawn on whether he thought the Archbishop of Canterbury should step down. He still said that was a matter for the church, but a few hours later, when Justin Welby did step down, he said he respected the decision.
Newscast from the BBC.